5-year-old Noah Caldwell didn't care about the high-tech gala or the hundreds of people in tuxedos. He was focused on the tall, angry man in the sharp business suit who had been shouting at his mother for the last 3 minutes. Noah marched across the marble floor with the confidence of a CEO. He stopped right between the two arguing adults, smoothed his tiny burgundy tie, and looked up at the billionaire with a face that was far too serious for a child. "Excuse me, sir," Noah said, his voice as calm as a business report. "If you're really as smart as the Wall Street Journal says, why haven't you figured out that my ears match yours exactly?" Kang Hyun-Woo froze. The heir left the room. He looked down and his heart nearly stopped. Because the child standing in front of him wasn't just a boy. He was a mirror image. The same intense, calculating eyes. The same stubborn jawline. The same powerful posture. And based on the boy's age. That should have been impossible. Naomi Caldwell had vanished from Tokyo 5 years ago without leaving a single trace. Yet here she was, standing in the middle of his own gala, with a son who looked like a miniature version of the man he saw in the mirror every morning. If you think this moment was shocking, you haven't seen anything yet. What happens next will turn this entire gala upside down and reveal a secret Kang Hyun-Woo never saw coming. Kindly hit the subscribe button so you do not miss out in any of my videos. If you're wondering how a whirlwind Tokyo romance, a desperate escape to New York, and a secret pregnancy led to this moment, where a 5-year-old just outsmarted the most powerful billionaire in Seoul, then you're in the right place. Because this story actually begins 5 years earlier. Back then, Naomi Caldwell was a brilliant project manager who had no idea her life was about to collide with the Kang global conglomerate. She thought she had found the perfect man in Hyun-Woo. She didn't realize she was stepping into a world governed by the Kang protocol. It was a world of unimaginable wealth and cold, hard rules. The kind of world where people weren't family, they were assets. The kind of world where problems didn't just go away. They were erased. And right at the center of that empire was Kang Hyun-Woo, a man used to having total control, and the heir to a legacy that didn't believe in happy endings. Naomi had to make a choice. Let the Kangs own her child, or run and raise a genius in the shadows. He chose to run. But in a world of billionaires and high-stakes business, no secret stays hidden forever. The humid air of Tokyo always smelled like rain and expensive espresso. 5 years ago, Naomi Caldwell wasn't a mother or a fugitive. She was just the best project manager in the business, and she had exactly 3 weeks to save a failing hotel renovation. The Imperial Sky Hotel was a disaster zone of broken marble and unfinished wiring. Naomi stood in the middle of the chaotic lobby, her heels clicking against the dusty floor as she barked orders into her headset. She didn't notice the black town car pulling up outside or the way the construction workers suddenly went silent. "I don't care if the gold leaf is stuck in customs," Naomi said, rubbing her temples. "If it's not on those pillars by Friday, we're all out of The gold leaf is the least of your problems." The voice was like velvet over gravel. Naomi spun around. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been carved out of obsidian. He was tall, his dark hair perfectly slicked back, and his suit probably cost more than her entire college tuition. This was Kang Hyun-Woo, the man the local crews called the Eraser, because of how quickly he fired people who failed him. "And you are?" Naomi asked, refusing to be intimidated. She crossed her arms, standing her ground against his towering frame. Hyun-Woo stepped closer, his dark eyes scanning the room before landing on her. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached out and plucked the tablet right out of her hands. He swiped through her project logs with lightning speed. "Your timeline is aggressive," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "But your budget for the penthouse suite is 10% over. In my world, Naomi, 10% is the difference between a partnership and a lawsuit." Naomi felt a spark of heat that had nothing to do with the broken air conditioning. "In my world, Mr. Kang, quality costs money. You want this hotel to be the crown jewel of Tokyo, don't you? Or did you just come here to look at my spreadsheets?" For a second, the tension in the room was so thick you could feel it. The workers held their breath, waiting for Hyun-Woo to snap. He was a man used to people trembling when he spoke. Instead, a small, dangerous smile touched his lips. It was the first time anyone had ever talked back to him. "You have fire," he whispered, leaning in so close she could smell his sandalwood cologne. "Most people just have excuses." He handed the tablet back, his fingers lingering against hers for a second too long. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight through her. "Meet me in the lounge at 8, he commanded. "We'll fix your budget. And then we'll see if that fire of yours is good for anything else." He turned and walked away without waiting for an answer. Naomi watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. She told herself it was just professional stress. She told herself he was arrogant and difficult. But as she looked down at her shaking hands, she realized she was already in trouble. She didn't know yet that this business meeting would lead to a whirlwind romance that would change her life forever. And she certainly didn't know that 5 years later, she'd be running for her life to keep their son away from his family's shadow. The 3 months that followed were a blur of midnight meetings and stolen kisses in the back of black town cars. Naomi had fallen hard, but in the world of the Kang family, love was a luxury they couldn't afford. It was a rainy Tuesday when the world shifted. Naomi sat in her small Tokyo apartment, staring at the bathroom counter. 2 pink lines. Her heart did a slow, heavy roll in her chest. She was happy, terrified, and desperate to tell Hyun-Woo. She pictured his face softening, his usual mask of billionaire coldness finally melting away for good. She didn't call him. She wanted to see him. She went to the Kang corporate headquarters, bypassing the main security with the pass he'd given her. She made it all the way to the heavy oak doors of his father's private study, ready to burst in with her secret. But then she heard the voices. "She's a distraction, Hyun-Woo," a sharp, older voice rasped. It was his father, the chairman. "The merger with the Hans is the only thing that matters. This woman, this project manager, she is a glitch in the system." Naomi froze, her hand hovering over the handle. "She isn't a glitch," Hyun-Woo replied, his voice sounding tired. "She's the reason the hotel is actually succeeding. Success is measured in bloodlines and billions, not hotel lobbies," the chairman snapped. "I've already looked into her. If she becomes a problem, if she tries to tie herself to this family, I will make sure she is erased. Her career, her reputation, her very presence in this city. Do you understand?" There was a long, agonizing silence. Naomi held her breath, praying for Hyun-Woo to roar back, to defend her, to say he didn't care about the empire. "I'll handle it," Hyun-Woo said finally. His voice was flat. "Me. She won't be an issue." Naomi felt like she'd been struck by lightning. She looked down at her stomach, where a tiny life was just beginning. Hyun-Woo hadn't said no. He hadn't fought for her. He had promised to handle her. In that moment, she realized she wasn't just a girlfriend. She was a liability. To the chairman, she was a bug to be crushed. To Hyun-Woo, she was a problem to be solved. If they found out about the baby, they wouldn't see a grandson. They would see a weapon or a mistake. She backed away from the door, her sneakers silent on the plush carpet. She didn't go back to her apartment. She didn't pack a suitcase. She had her passport in her purse and a credit card they couldn't track. As she hailed a taxi to Narita Airport, she looked at the glowing lights of the Tokyo skyline one last time. She was leaving behind the man she loved, but she was saving the person who mattered more. She had no plan and no job, just a secret that was growing every second. As the plane lifted off into the dark sky, Naomi whispered a promise to her unborn son. "They will never find us. I won't let them turn you into one of them." She thought she was safe. She didn't realize that 5 years later, her son's own DNA would lead them right back into the lion's den. Naomi landed in New York with nothing but a carry-on bag and a heart full of lead. The city was loud, gray, and completely indifferent to her heartbreak. For the first few months, she lived in a cramped studio apartment where the heater clanked all night, working 3 low-level temp jobs just to keep the lights on. Every time she saw a man in a sharp suit or heard someone speaking Korean on the subway, her breath hitched. She was waiting for the eraser to find her, but the silence from Tokyo was absolute. Then Noah arrived, and the world finally got some color again. By the time Noah was 2, Naomi realized her son wasn't like other toddlers. While other kids were drawing on walls with crayons, Noah was busy sorting his alphabet blocks by color, size, and weight. He didn't throw tantrums. He gave Naomi disappointed looks when she was 5 minutes late with his snack. "Mama," he said one afternoon, pointing at her laptop. "The numbers in this row don't match the ones at the bottom." Naomi blinked, leaning in. She was working a freelance project management gig, trying to claw her way back into the professional world. Noah was right. Her 3-year-old had just spotted a data entry error in a multi-million-dollar budget. That was the pivot. Naomi realized that if she was going to protect a genius, she had to become a titan. She spent her nights studying for her certifications while Noah sat on the floor next to her, reading her old business textbooks. She stopped running from her past and started building a fortress. By the time Noah turned 5, Naomi had climbed the ladder to become one of the most sought-after consultants in Manhattan. They moved from the clanking studio to a sleek apartment with a view of the skyline. She felt safe. She had changed her name, her hair, and her life. Noah, however, was already outgrowing his surroundings. He insisted on wearing a navy blazer to his kindergarten orientation. He didn't want toys for his birthday. He wanted a subscription to financial magazines. "Why do you look at that photo of the man in the silver frame?" Noah asked one evening, his dark eyes that looked exactly like a billionaire's, boring into hers. Naomi froze, her hand trembling as she tucked the old hidden photo of Hyun-Woo deeper into her drawer. "Just someone I used to work with, Noah." "You look sad when you think about him," Noah noted, tapping his chin. "That seems like a poor use of your emotional resources." Naomi laughed, but it felt hollow. She thought she had outrun the Kang family, but every time she looked at her son's brilliant, calculating mind, she saw the man she had left behind. She was finally successful, finally independent, and finally happy. Then the email arrived. A massive architectural firm in Seoul wanted her specifically to lead a billion-dollar bid. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and a direct ticket back to the one place she swore she'd never go. "Should we take the contract, Mama?" Noah asked, peering over her shoulder at the screen. "The ROI is statistically significant." Naomi looked at her son, then at the glowing accept button. She didn't know that clicking it would lead to a gala, a confrontation, and a secret that was about to explode. Life in their New York apartment was never exactly normal, but by the time Noah turned 4, it felt more like living with a tiny, high-powered business partner than a toddler. While other kids were obsessed with talking trucks or cartoon puppies, Noah was obsessed with efficiency. Naomi sat at the kitchen island, surrounded by blueprints and glowing monitors. She was finishing a proposal for a luxury high-rise, her coffee long since gone cold. She rubbed her eyes, exhausted by the sea of numbers, when a small, shadow-like figure climbed onto the stool next to her. Noah was wearing his favorite navy blazer over his pajamas. He reached out a small hand and tapped a specific cell on her spreadsheet. "Mama, you forgot to factor in the rising cost of structural steel," he said, his voice as matter-of-fact as a seasoned accountant's. "If you keep this number, your profit margin will drop by 4% in Q3. Naomi blinked, looking from the screen to her 4-year-old. She did the math in her head. Her jaw dropped. "Noah, how did you?" "It's basic logic, Mama," he interrupted, hopping down from the stool. "Also, we're out of almond milk. I've already added it to the digital grocery list." It was moments like this that sent a chill down Naomi's spine. Noah didn't just look like Hyun-Woo. He moved like him. He had that same alpha energy, the kind that could command a room without even trying. He didn't play, he negotiated. He didn't share toys. He formed strategic alliances on the playground. The next morning was the real test. Preschool orientation. Naomi had laid out a cute dinosaur t-shirt and soft joggers, but Noah was standing in front of his full-length mirror, struggling with a tiny burgundy tie. "Noah, honey, you're going to be painting and playing in a sandbox today," Naomi pleaded, holding up the dinosaur shirt. "You'll be uncomfortable in a suit." Noah didn't even turn around. He successfully looped the silk fabric and tightened the knot with a sharp tug. "I am representing the Caldwell name, Mama. First impressions are the foundation of any successful venture. Besides, the teacher is more likely to listen to my suggestions for the classroom layout if I look professional." Naomi sighed, a mix of pride and fear swirling in her chest. She knelt down and straightened his collar, looking into those dark, brilliant eyes. She saw so much of the man who had broken her heart, yet so much of the strength she had used to survive. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "I'm exactly as smart as I need to be," Noah replied, grabbing his miniature briefcase. "Now let's go. If we leave now, we can avoid the 8:15 traffic surge." As they walked to the car, Naomi felt a strange sense of dread. Noah was a masterpiece, but he was a masterpiece that looked more and more like a Kong every day. She had kept him a secret for 4 years, but as his personality grew, she realized she wasn't just hiding a child, she was hiding a legacy. And deep down, she knew that a mind like Noah's wouldn't stay hidden forever. The news didn't come as a phone call or a formal letter. It came as an alert on Naomi's tablet while she was making pancakes on a rainy Tuesday. The headline was bold and impossible to ignore. Caldwell Consulting wins $1.2 billion Seoul waterfront bid. Naomi dropped the spatula. The plastic hit the floor with a dull thud, splattering batter across her shoes. She should have been screaming with joy. This was the biggest win of her career, the kind of deal that put you on the cover of magazines. But all she could feel was a cold, numbing weight in her chest. "The analytics predicted this, Mama," Noah said, not looking up from his bowl of oatmeal. He was already dressed for the day, his crisp white collar perfectly straight. "Our proposal was 12% more efficient than the local firms. It was the only logical outcome." "Noah, we can't go," Naomi whispered, her voice shaking. Noah finally looked up, his dark, observant eyes narrowing. "The contract has a mandatory on-site clause, Mama. If we back out now, the legal penalties would liquidate 60% of our assets. Also," he added, tapping a finger on the table, "you always tell me that Caldwells don't run from a challenge." Naomi looked at her son and felt a pang of guilt. He was right. She had spent 5 years teaching him to be brave, yet here she was, terrified of a ghost from her past. She had spent half a decade convincing herself that Tokyo and Seoul were worlds away, that the Kang family would never look for a project manager in Brooklyn. But this contract wasn't just a job, it was a spotlight. "Pack your bags, Noah," she said, her voice regaining its strength. "But we have rules. We stay in the hotel. We only go to the construction site and the government offices. No galas. No press. No wandering." "Understood," Noah said, though he looked skeptical. "But I'll need a heavier wool suit. Seoul is colder than New York this time of year." 2 weeks later, the skyscraper-filled skyline of Seoul rose up to meet them. As the plane touched down, Naomi felt like she was stepping into a trap. Every black car in the parking lot looked like a Kang vehicle. Every man in a suit made her want to duck behind her luggage. She checked into the hotel under her corporate name, keeping Noah close. She thought she could do the work and vanish before anyone noticed. She thought she could keep the secret hidden behind boardroom doors and blueprints. But destiny has a funny way of ignoring travel itineraries. On their 3rd night, a knock came at the door of their luxury suite. It wasn't room service. It was a hand-delivered invitation, embossed with silver ink and a crest that made Naomi's blood turn to ice. "The Kang Group requests the presence of Naomi Caldwell at the Global Innovation Gala." "They know," Naomi breathed, clutching the card so hard the edges crinkled. "Technically, they invited the lead consultant," Noah pointed out, appearing at her side. He reached out and touched the silver crest. Is this the man from the silver frame, Mama? The one who makes you sad? Naomi didn't answer. She couldn't. The collision she had been running from for 5 years was no longer avoidable. She had two choices: stay in the room and lose everything, or walk into that gala and face the man who had handled her heart. The silence in the grand ballroom was so heavy you could hear the bubbles popping in the expensive champagne. Kang Hyun-Woo didn't look like the eraser anymore. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. His eyes moved from Naomi's pale face down to the boy who stood barely waist-high, yet held his ground with the confidence of a king. 5 years, Naomi, Hyun-Woo rasped, his voice cutting through the quiet. You vanished. And now you show up with this. I didn't show up for you, Hyun-Woo, Naomi said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay firm. I'm here for a contract. We were leaving on Friday. Hyun-Woo stepped forward, his shadow looming over them. His face was a mask of shock and growing fury. Leaving? You think you can just walk out again? Look at him. He has my eyes. He has my jaw. I want a DNA test. My security team will take you to the clinic immediately. The guests around them whispered, their eyes darting between the billionaire and the mysterious boy in the navy suit. Naomi felt the old fear clawing at her throat. This was exactly what she had run from: the Kang family taking control, making demands, treating people like property. But before she could speak, a small gloved hand tugged on Hyun-Woo's sleeve. Actually, Mr. Kang, that won't be necessary, Noah said. He sounded bored, as if he were discussing a weather report instead of his own paternity. Noah reached into his miniature briefcase and pulled out a small, clear plastic baggie. Inside was a sterile cotton swab. I assumed this would be your first request, Noah continued, handing the baggie to the stunned billionaire. The DNA is already on the swab. I collected it this morning. I've also included a list of 3 independent labs that have no financial ties to the Kang Group. I'm sure you'll want to verify the results with all of them to ensure there is no statistical bias. Hyun-Woo stared at the baggie, then at the boy. His fingers brushed against Noah's as he took it, and for a split second, the billionaire's tough exterior cracked. He saw the same calculating mind he used to crush his rivals, now staring back at him from a 5-year-old's face. You prepared for this? Hyun-Woo whispered. I believe in being proactive, Noah replied, straightening his burgundy tie. Now, if we're done with the biological formalities, my mother is quite stressed. I suggest you offer her a seat and some water before she decides to terminate this conversation entirely. Naomi looked at her son, her heart aching. He was protecting her. But as Hyun-Woo clutched the DNA sample like it was the most valuable asset he had ever owned, she realized the eraser wasn't going to let them go. The secret was out, the data was in his hands, and the real battle for Noah's future had just begun. Hyun-Woo looked up from the baggie, his eyes burning with a new, dangerous intensity. Friday. You aren't going anywhere on Friday, Naomi. Not until we discuss the new terms of our partnership. The black sedan waiting outside the gala wasn't a suggestion. It was an ultimatum. Within an hour, Naomi and Noah were being driven toward the Kang family estate, a sprawling fortress of glass and dark stone tucked away in the hills of Seoul. Hyun-Woo sat across from them, his long legs cramped in the back of the car, his gaze never leaving Noah. The anger from the ballroom had settled into a cold, hard determination. The hotel is no longer secure, he said, his voice dropping into that commanding tone Naomi remembered all too well. My family's rivals will have seen the boy by now. You'll stay at the estate. I've already had your things moved from the hotel. Naomi felt a surge of lightning-hot fury. You did what? You have no right to touch our things, Hyun-Woo. We are not your employees, and we are certainly not your prisoners. It's called a strategic relocation, Mama, Noah chirped from the middle seat, peering out the window at the passing city lights. Though, technically, doing so without a signed residency agreement is a breach of personal boundary protocols. Hyun-Woo's eyes flickered with a mix of frustration and hidden pride. The boy stays where he is safe. That is the only protocol that matters. When they arrived at the estate, the doors were opened by a line of silent staff. The house felt more like a museum than a home, cold, perfect, and terrifyingly quiet. Hyun-Woo led them to a massive suite on the second floor. You'll have everything you need here. Doctors, tutors, security. You don't ever have to worry about the world outside again. Naomi stood in the center of the room, her professional gray suit crinkled but her spirit unbroken. She turned to face him, stepping into his personal space until she was inches from his chest. This is what you do, isn't it? You see something you want and you build a cage around it. You think that because you have billions, you own the people who share your blood. I am trying to protect him. Hyun-Woo shouted, the mask finally slipping. I missed 5 years, Naomi. 5 years where he was growing up in a city halfway across the world, while my father's enemies were looking for any weakness to use against me. He isn't a weakness, Naomi hissed. He's a person, and I am his mother. You don't get to skip the part where you earn our trust and jump straight to the part where you lock us in a tower. Hyun-Woo looked at her, his jaw tight. For a second, the billionaire who ran an empire looked lost. But then he straightened his silk tie. The DNA results will be back in the morning. Once they are official, my father will be informed. And if you think I'm difficult, Naomi, you haven't seen how the chairman handles an unauthorized heir. He turned and walked out, the heavy doors clicking shut behind him. Naomi slumped against the bed, her heart racing. She had fought so hard for 5 years to keep Noah out of this world, and now they were trapped in the belly of the beast. Mama, Noah asked softly, standing by the window. I checked the locks. They're electronic. But I think I can bypass the guest wing firewall if I can get to a hardwired port. Naomi looked at her brilliant tiny son. She wasn't just fighting Hyun-Woo anymore. She was fighting an entire legacy. And the biggest threat wasn't the guards outside. It was the man down the hall who was starting to realize that he didn't just want his heir. He wanted her too. The heavy double doors of the study creaked open, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chairman Kang sat behind a desk made of dark, polished stone, looking like an ancient king on a throne. He didn't look at Naomi, and he certainly didn't look at the DNA results. He kept his eyes fixed on Noah, who was standing perfectly still, his small hands tucked into his blazer pockets. The results are positive, the chairman said, his voice like dry parchment. The child will be groomed for succession. He will begin his training at our private academy in Switzerland next month. As for the mother, he finally flicked his gaze toward Naomi, his eyes full of icy disdain. A generous settlement has been prepared. You will return to New York, and you will not contact him again. Naomi felt the floor drop out from under her. He is 5 years old. You can't just buy a child's life and ship him away like a piece of equipment. I am not a piece of equipment, grandfather, Noah interrupted, his voice calm but sharp. And your business model is outdated. High-performing assets require emotional stability to reach their full potential. Separating me from my primary caregiver is a poor investment. The chairman's face turned a deep, angry red. Silence. You are a Kang. You will do as you are told. No, a new voice boomed. Hyun-Woo stepped out from the shadows of the doorway. He didn't look like the eraser anymore. He looked like a man who had finally found something worth more than $1 billion merger. He walked over and stood between his father and Naomi, placing a protective hand on Noah's shoulder. He isn't going to Switzerland, Hyun-Woo said, his voice low and dangerous. And Naomi isn't going anywhere. For 30 years I watched you break people to build this company. You broke my mother and you tried to break me. But you will not touch my son. The chairman stood up, his hands trembling with rage. You would throw away your inheritance for this? For a woman who lied to you. If you defy me, I will strip you of your title. You'll have nothing. Hyun-Woo looked at Naomi. He saw the fire in her eyes, The same fire that had captivated him in that dusty hotel lobby in Tokyo. Then he looked down at Noah, who was looking up at him with a rare, small smile of approval. "Then keep the title," Hyun-Woo said, tossing his corporate ID badge onto the stone desk. "I spent 5 years without them and I was miserable. I'm not spending another second without my family just to keep a seat at your table." He turned his back on the most powerful man in Korea and held out his hand to Naomi. "Let's go. We have a lot of lost time to make up for." As they walked out of the estate, leaving the chairman fuming in his silent museum, Naomi felt a weight lift that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying for 5 years. But as they reached the car, Hyun-Woo stopped and looked at her, a nervous glint in his eyes. "I have no job, no office, and my father probably just canceled my credit cards," he admitted. "Don't worry," Noah said, climbing into the back seat. "I've been tracking your personal investments for the last 48 hours. If we diversify your tech stocks and pivot to real estate, we'll be fine. Now can we go get some ice cream? I've calculated that we are all overdue for a sugar-based reward." The morning sun in Seoul felt different now. No longer like a spotlight she had to hide from, but like a fresh start. Naomi sat on the balcony of their new apartment, watching the city wake up. The glass and steel towers didn't look like a cage anymore. They looked like a playground. A soft clink of porcelain signaled Hyun-Woo's arrival. He set a cup of coffee in front of her. His sleeves rolled up and his tie nowhere to be seen. It was a look Naomi was still getting used to, the billionaire off the clock. "I've spent the morning reviewing our liquid assets," a small voice announced. Noah marched onto the balcony, carrying a tablet that looked nearly as big as his torso. He was wearing his navy blazer, of course, but he'd swapped the burgundy tie for a more relaxed forest green one. He climbed onto the chair between them and tapped the screen. "We are officially overdue for a team-building retreat," Noah said, looking from Naomi to Hyun-Woo. "Or, as the commoners call it, a vacation." Hyun-Woo leaned back, a genuine smile tugging at his lips. "I was thinking the Maldives. Private island, no phones, total seclusion." "Statistically, that's a low-engagement environment," Noah countered, shaking his head. "I've analyzed our family's needs. You need to learn how to relax without a spreadsheet. Mama needs to stop checking the perimeter for erasers. And I need a location with high-quality educational museums." Naomi laughed, reaching over to ruffle Noah's hair. He let her, though he quickly smoothed it back into place. "So, what's the proposal, Mr. Consultant?" "London," Noah stated. "High historical value, excellent public transit for logistical efficiency, and they have world-class fish and chips. I've already drafted a 7-day itinerary with built-in breaks for spontaneous fun." Hyun-Woo reached out, his hand finding Naomi's under the table. His thumb traced a slow circle over her skin, a silent promise that he wasn't going anywhere. 7 days. I was hoping for 14. I have 5 years of missed birthdays and holidays to make up for. "We can negotiate for 10, Noah said, narrowing his eyes like he was closing a multi-billion-dollar merger. "If, and only if, you promise not to buy the hotel we stay in just because you don't like the concierge." Hyun-Woo chuckled, a deep, warm sound that made Naomi's heart skip. "I'll try to restrain myself." As they sat there, debating the merits of the British Museum versus the London Eye, Naomi realized she had finally won. She hadn't just saved her son, she had helped Hyun-Woo save himself. The Kang legacy was no longer about cold stone and broken hearts. It was about this. A noisy, smart, slightly ridiculous family making plans for a future they finally owned together. "It's a deal," Naomi said, raising her coffee cup. Noah nodded, satisfied, and tapped a final command on his tablet. "Booking confirmed. Now about the flight logistics." The secret was out, the battle was over. And for the first time in 5 years, Naomi wasn't running. She was exactly where she was meant to be.